And unfortunately, it worked. The New Deal coalition brought a lot of the labor movements into the Democratic Party, and a lot of the independent parties at the time essentially disbanded. So as a result of that, after World War II and all, after the New Deal, you had a lot of old labor and socialists who advocated joining the Democratic Party because of what they perceived as a success in getting some reforms of the New Deal. And then you had like the civil rights movement and feminism and the beginnings of the environmental movement all start to come up that were able to get some additional concessions, right? That you had civil rights legislation passed. You had the creation of the EPA and stuff that eventually came. So there was kind of this encouragement of, well, socialists and labor parties and all could actually participate within the Democratic Party and get some change. And so you had many folks arguing that, including Michael Harrington, who was a big deal. He ended up co-forming the organization that eventually became DSA today. So it was essentially formed with the purpose of drawing socialists into the Democratic Party. And hopefully that doesn't persist. Hopefully DSA members today will actually advocate for more independence, but that was at least how it formed. And so you had the formation of the New Left, which kind of looked at how the old labor movements were suppressed and said, what can we do differently to organize moving forward to try to be more successful? And so they looked at a whole bunch of other influences. Chris mentioned Horkheimer and Adorno. You had the Frankfurt schools, what they were called. They did more kind of social research, right? They analyzed like mass media and things like that, but from a very Marxist sort of lens and perspective. You also had as environmental movements grew, you had folks starting to ask, how does environmentalism fit in with socialism? And one of the early ones who did that was Bookchin, who created what he called social ecology, which we'll talk more about in a moment here. But all these movements drew from the civil rights and feminism and environmental movements like we were talking about. And as some folks got drawn into the Democratic Party, everyone else started to think about, well, that doesn't seem to be that successful because the Democrats, they'll give us some little, some little carrot, but then they ignore us, then they forget us, right? And then they start rolling back those changes, right? Because they're really working for capitalism. They're not trying to create socialism. So you also start to hear murmurs again of like, how do we rebuild an independent movement from that? That can really explain what the problems are and help organize the working class toward a better future. So